Hi, I'm Michelle Chalfant, psychotherapist, holistic life coach, and human just like you, learning to navigate life's challenges. With over 25 years experience, I teach people how to get healthy using the adult chair model. The adult chair model is where simple psychology meets grounded spirituality, and it teaches us how to become healthy adults. From anxiety and depression to codependency and relationship issues, you can use the adult chair for just about anything. Each week, I share practical tips, tools, and advice from myself and a wide range of experts on how to get unstuck, how to live authentically, and how to truly love yourself, all while sitting in your adult chair. Welcome to the Adult Chair Podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Adult Chair Podcast. I am Michelle Chalfant with you today on this final Thursday of June. We are at podcast number 373. We have a very, very interesting topic today. We're talking about drama, not just drama, but what do you do if you are addicted to drama? Now, you can actually interchange that word drama with chaos, busy, and all the words that feel like that. So I want you just to think about, how are you showing up in your life on a daily basis? Do you feel drawn to creating or find yourself in some sort of chaos every day or drama? Or again, are you finding that you are plugging in busy things when you have space of nothing to do? Right? So I'm sure most of us can relate to this. I certainly related to this big time. I remember even one of my teachers way back when shared with me, Michelle, you might be addicted to suffering. So all of these things can go into the same category as drama, under this umbrella of drama. So this is such an important show. I remember when I had seen that Scott put this book out, I was like, we are getting him on the show. That's what we're doing today. So he has a brand new book out, Dr. Scott Lyons. It is called Addicted to Drama, Healing Dependency on Crisis and Chaos in Yourself and Others. And boy, oh boy, we got into it today. We talked about so many great things, like what exactly does it mean to have an addiction to drama? And he broke it down so beautifully, not only on what an addiction is, but he went deep into the drama aspect of it and common symptoms and impacts of drama addiction. We also talked about, how does it affect friends, family, colleagues even, if you are either the person that has a drama addiction or someone that is in your life that has this addiction to drama. How do you handle that? How do you set boundaries around that? We talked all about these things, as well as, if this sounds like you, how then do you break free and heal your addiction to drama or chaos or busyness or suffering, whatever it might be? How do we break our addiction to these kinds of things? Because boy, he shared some statistics around this on how it is just increasing even over the last 10 years. Of course, because of cell phones, because of internet and all of these things, how, oh my goodness, we have addictions to these kinds of things. But what do we do if we are? How do we break free? So it's such a really interesting show. And gosh, you're going to want to listen to the show and definitely share it with people in your life, because I guarantee you, I certainly know of many people that I'm going to share this show with, because so many of us are suffering with this sort of addiction. So such a great show. But let me tell you a little bit more about Dr. Scott Lyons. He is a licensed holistic psychologist, educator, and author of the book, Addicted to Drama, Healing Dependency on Crisis and Chaos in Yourself and Others. As a renowned body-based trauma expert and mind-body medicine specialist, Scott helps people to break free from cycles of pain, limiting beliefs, and trauma. Scott is an innovator in transformative wellness and trauma therapy, teaching over 500,000 people internationally over the past 20 years how to relieve stress and restore vitality. Scott is the creator of the Embody Lab, the largest online learning platform for body-based trauma therapies. And he's the developer of somatic stress release, a holistic process of restoring biological resilience taught in over 20 countries. Scott is also the founder and progressive designer of Omala, a wellness brand dedicated to creating sustainably sourced tools for transformation. Wealth of information right here. Let me just tell you, wealth of knowledge is what Dr. Scott Lyons is bringing to the show today. So I look forward to you hearing all about the show. And here we go with talking all about addicted to drama. So welcome to the Adult Share podcast, Dr. Scott Lyons.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I am so excited to have you. In fact, I was just saying to you, I don't think there is another book on this topic.
No, I wish there was, which is why I wrote it.
I think it's great that there's not, which is great why you wrote it, because we need it so desperately. And what a powerful topic, addicted to drama.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing to me just to go to that idea that nothing had been written about it, is because we all know someone addicted to drama. Usually it's not us, never us, usually not us, but we definitely like our mother-in-law, our siblings, our spouses, like that friend from high school. We all know someone, and we have this like visceral response, even to like, if I were to say to you, who do you know addicted to drama? And before you even could think of the person, or maybe simultaneously you have this whole like visceral response of what it's like to be in interaction with them.
Yeah.
And so it's wild to me that we all know it. We all know someone, and yet there was no deconstruction. There was no unpacking or understanding of something we all know so inherently.
So true.
Yeah.
I think that I might be one of the people that was addicted to drama.
Welcome to the club.
You're like, we know someone. I'm like, I think it was me. I used to call it chaos in my 20s, but we
Yeah.
can call it. So let's start right there,
Yeah.
which is what the heck. Let's start. What is addiction to drama? Well, let's start out with this. What is drama? How would you define it? Let's define drama. Let's start there.
Trauma is considered the unnecessary turmoil, the unnecessary chaos and crisis, the intensification and exaggeration of response that is in direct conflict with the amount of stimulus. So, unnecessary is kind of the key word here. And, that definition really comes more from an outside perspective, and we'll talk about that, because the outside conception of what an addiction to drama looks like or feels like is quite different than how it is from the inside. But before we go into that, because you asked such a great question, what is an addiction to drama? Let's go with what is an addiction. And there's an old school thought that essentially it's a disease. It's a idea that you have this particular disease, and you have a chemical dependency on whatever it is that happens to be part of your disease, whether it's, alcohol or cocaine or drugs, substance, usually. Then along came years later, like, oh, maybe there's more things that we might be attached to besides substance, which then became more like behavioral addictions, like gambling or sex, that have become more accepted. But for a while, they were not accepted ideas of addiction. And then we've stepped even further into understanding not the dependency from just a illness perspective, but why does this dependency form? And that's really like the work of Gabor Mate and so many others who have been really trailblazing a newer conception of addiction, a more holistic, empathetic, humanistic idea of addiction. And essentially, as any part of trauma, and trauma can be a event or a series event, or a lack of event, a lack of love, like an emotional desert can be a trauma. And that has an impact on the body. And the way we respond to injury, in like if you've ever fallen down, you get inflammation, right? A part of your body sections off to protect yourself. And so in trauma, that impact, that injury happens in the same way. We section off so as not to be overwhelmed and essentially perish in the painful experience of the trauma.
Mhm.
And it creates a void. We are not able to be present in this area. We dissociate, we disconnect, and it
Mhm.
creates a space. And in that emptiness, we experience emptiness. And so, how do we fill it? And we fill it with the things that create distraction or pain relief.
Mhm.
And we become attached, dependent on those things that do that exact job.
Mm.
And when we think about it that way, of course, we become dependent on getting high as a way that helps us avoid making contact with the underlying void or the pain that resides in that space as well. And stress does an amazing job at both helping us avoid ourselves and offers pain relief. If we
Mm.
think about like when you go for a run,
Mhm.
yeah, that endorphic high you get, that's
Mhm.
from a stress response. And so the first part of a stress response is a release of endorphins, is a release of pain relief. Is it
Mhm.
creates pain relief in that way. And so we become attached, dependent on wanting hits of things that give us essentially that constant stream of pain relief, avoidance. And here's the really interesting third piece, which it helps produce enough sensation to rise above the threshold of that numbness that gets created as a protection from the trauma
Mm.
and helps us feel that we are alive.
Mm.
Because part of the result of trauma and the numbness that protects us from being swept away by the pain is that we become numb to the world. We become numb to ourselves. And in the book, I refer to myself in that state as a walking ghost.
Mm. Wow.
And I used to tell my parents all the time as a kid, I was like, I don't understand. I feel um, I didn't I didn't quite have the language I have now, but I would say like I don't feel big. I don't feel dimensional. I feel
Mhm.
like I'm a ghost in the world, like a walking ghost. And of course, they sent me to therapy going, this kid's kind of crazy. We have no idea what he's talking about. But essentially, I was saying I was so dissociated as a
Mm.
mechanism of surviving my traumas that I
Mhm.
didn't know how to find my way back home.
Wow. Mhm.
And so that's really, that's addiction
Mhm.
in a nutshell.
Yeah.
And the idea that we become dependent on stress, which is, a synonym sometimes for chaos, crisis, and drama,
Mhm.
the unnecessary amount of stress, because it actually serves a purpose of filling that void, of giving us enough sensation rise above the threshold and helps us um, avoid ourself in the contact of the pain that resides there.
Mm. What a definition. That was really good. Beautifully said. Beautifully said.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, so I liked when you said too that drama is, you said it's the chaos. So how
Yeah.
does how does that happen? I hear you with addiction that
Yeah.
we're feeling that. I get that.
Yeah.
How would someone know other than raised awareness that they are sitting and living in drama and addicted to drama? Like, how would someone listening to this say, oh my goodness, that sounds like me? Because I remember a therapist
Yeah.
said to me, I think you're addicted. I started having this awareness. Like my husband, when I first had my children, I stayed home just for like a couple of years before I started working again.
Yeah.
And he would come home and my emotions were like up and down. And
Mhm.
that's how I grew up though. Up and
Yeah.
down, emotions, Italian, up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down.
Yeah.
New York Italian, all over the place, right?
I
Like
feel you. I
that's just
feel you.
how I
I'm a New
was, right?
Yorker. I get it.
Yeah, like that's how I was. And then my husband would come home and it was like flatline, like really not any emotion. How was your day? Every day for 10 years was great. And I used to think, why can't I have a great day? Like I'm up and down and I'm high and I'm low and I'm all over.
Mhm.
And then I had this awareness like, wow, I feel so. I think a friend of mine who is a therapist said, you live in so much drama, but it's like
Mm.
your childhood. And it was like light bulb for me.
Yeah.
And then of course I was like, I love to work on myself. So then I went to therapy. I'm like, this I will work on. But I didn't know it.
No.
I did
No.
not know it. I thought that was normal because my Italian household growing up was up and down and crazy dramatic. So
Yeah.
that's my norm. So how would
Well,
someone know?
well, I just want to really normalize your normalization of it. So,
Yeah.
of course, it wouldn't seem, of course, it would seem normal. You're
Yeah.
mirroring the chaos in your ecosystem,
Mm,
the inconsistency that
right.
is up and down, the chaos in which I grew up in the
Mhm.
ecosystem, where you never knew when you were going to get hugged or slapped or a door slammed
Mm,
or
mhm.
loved unconditionally or ignored. The inconsistency really
Ooh,
keeps
that's
you
good.
on guard,
Yep.
and that creates a vigilance, and
Yep.
it never lets you settle and rest in your nervous system. And
Yes.
then
Yes.
settling and the resting suddenly become danger. And so you have a built-in system, that an alarm system, that when you start to settle in your body, it goes, no, 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 no. That's a threat. And you will be
Mm,
unprepared for the next actual threat. Because
yeah.
when you grow up with trauma, when you grow up in chaotic households, you have to have your antenna up all the time. And your whole nervous system, all your sensory organs change and adapt to
Mhm.
that. They're on constant alert. They're on constant scanning for the negatives of the world,
Mm,
because in the negatives of emotion is potential threat. So
mm,
your smell, your touch, your sense of time all change to be on the lookout for threat.
mm.
Your cues of safety get ignored for cues of threat that occupy your attention.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
so when we talk about normalization of, like, um we would never know it was us, because here's the thing: in our nervous systems, our exaggerated responses are
Mhm.
justified if we're addicted to drama.
Mhm.
Because if our television of our brain is constantly stuck on the channel of bad things always happening, because that's what we're filtering in, then
Yeah.
the intensification of our response makes sense to us. It doesn't make sense on the outside, because they're not inside stuck on the channels of threat.
Mm,
And when we talk about what is regulation or self-regulation
mhm.
and dysregulation, self-regulation is the ability to know how much energy, attention, and emotion to utilize in our system to properly adapt to a stimulus. That's what regulation means: to keep us in optimal functioning and adapting to the situations at hand.
Mhm.
Dysregulation means that we don't have the barometer or the capacity to truly identify how much energy, attention, and emotion is needed to functionally adapt or navigate a situation. And so it always seems performative and intensified and exaggerated on the outside, but on the inside, it's normal. It
It's
makes
very normal.
sense.
That
It
makes
all,
so much sense.
yeah. And so that's why when I say an addiction to drama looks different on the outside than what it feels like on the inside. On the outside, people are going to be like, "Oh, that person is overreactive, hypersensitive. They get bored easily and need stimulus constantly. They make situations bigger than they are. They make mountains out of molehills."
Mhm.
Um, they're always being provocative. They're really stuck in the news and replaying it as though they're part of the news or the
Mhm.
stories on their television. They feel abandoned by others constantly. They feel that they're the victim.
Mhm.
Bad things always happen to them. Or
Mhm.
you might hear them saying things like, it's always something."
Yes.
Yes, a favorite line.
Mhm.
Um,
What about busy? I've talked to
Busy, yes,
so many people
overscheduling.
recently. They're like, "I'm busy. I'm so busy." I'm like, "Good God, you're busy all the time." And even I've noticed with people in my life that are chronically busy,
Yeah,
when there's a space of
they fill it.
downtime, boom, it's filled like
Yeah.
right away.
Absolutely. It's the same physiological mechanism. Someone asked me recently, well, isn't that just being a workaholic? And I said, well, what does being busy through work serve biologically?
Mhm.
And it serves the same function, that in the space, in the time of settling, what happens for those of us who have some propensity for addiction and drama, which by the way is all of us.
Damn it.
Here's, let me back up and just say, have you ever been to a meditation class, a yoga class, sat in a bathtub, gone to a garden, had the opportunity to rest, settle, find quietude, and suddenly been thinking about your ex or your child or your job or something that disrupts the potential for that peace? It raises you up, it stresses you up, it revs you to a degree that you are no longer settling. That reflex, which I call activation reflex, is the very mechanism that keeps those who are addicted to drama, quote unquote, safe and vigilant. And we all have that. We all do it. Or like, have you ever been sad and went and played an even sadder song? Like, why do we flood ourselves with more emotion than we already have? Does it actually help us process, or does it help us avoid by flooding ourselves?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Right?
Flooding. We're flooding.
We're flooding because there, in a way, when we flood ourselves with stimulus or busyness or emotion, it is actually a means to avoid the underlying contact with ourselves.
Wow. Ooh, this is hitting home for me. I'm sure it's hitting home for a lot of people listening like right now, like, ooh, that was so good. Okay. All right. Yeah.
So we have this way in which addiction and drama on the outside really, there's always this sense of urgency. They'll bulldoze, with needing to get things done. They always need to feel important, or without that, they talk about being alone, but it's hard for them to feel intimacy.
Yeah.
They pull people into their crisis all the time, which is a way for them to feel like they're in relationship with other people. It's the only safe way of intimacy, is to synchronize the internal chaos and creating the conditions of crisis around them so that people get pulled in as a way of feeling a false sense of belonging.
Wow.
That tornado of chaos that we all know so well, that we've either created ourselves or been pulled into, that is a sad cry for a sense of connection.
To self, you're saying, or other?
To other people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'll just say real quick, on the inside, it feels, I mean, you can maybe even add to this, having been on the inside of the realm of addiction and drama, but like, it feels like there's a constant rush. Like no matter where you go, something is working against you, that really, truly no one has your back, that the world is against you, that bad things always happen. And it is a hard world in which living on the inside of it. And
You took the word out of my mouth. I was going to say, I remember it like in my 20s and 30s, even it just felt hard, like really hard. Yeah.
I
Life
remember
was hard. It was exhausting too.
Yeah.
Exhausting.
Because we don't have the ability to optimize our energy, our attention, and our emotion in a way that's self-sustaining.
Right.
And I remember going to a therapist in my late 20s, and I just said, I can juggle grad school, and I can juggle working 2 full-time jobs, and I can juggle all these higher order things, but I can't mail a letter. It will take me weeks to mail a letter. And I said, I think that there's something a little weird about that. Like the things that aren't keeping me so generative, like stressed out, is hard for me. And we didn't quite get to the heart of it, but we started it. And it was, looking back now, I'm like, of course, everything just was hard unless it was serving a purpose of getting me revved up.
Yeah. So, okay. I'm sure everyone listening is going, yep, that's me. That's a little bit me, or that's a lot of me. Okay. So,
you know what? Can I tell you something that surprises me? When I wrote the book, I was I've gotten so much feedback from people that they're like, I had people write into me. They're like, I kind of hate you.
Mm.
I read your book and I realized I'm addicted to drama.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so surprised by that. I honestly am. That I thought people would read the book because it's also a book about how do you deal with family members and relatives and friends and coworkers who are addicted to drama. How do you survive that?
Yeah,
Because it's also depleting to your whole system.
true.
And I thought I would have more people write in and be like, thank you for helping me deal with my boss or my partner or my mom. But I've had more people write in and they're like, I kind of hate you. I realize I'm addicted to drama. Damn you. Which
I
is wild.
I'm wondering because
Yeah.
there aren't other books on this out there, and there's been studies done because I would think as
Hmm.
soon as the internet was created,
Yeah.
that this became a bigger addiction for most people with a cell phone. Like just having a cell phone, that's really hard to separate self from cell phone or
Yeah.
the computer. Like, are you finding, or did you
Hmm.
find that at all that in the last,
Yeah.
10 to 20 years that this has actually gotten worse?
Yeah. Well, my favorite chapter in the book is chapter 9, which is looking at how 30 years ago we can actually use a lot of data points and research to identify 30 years ago those who were addicted to drama had an attachment or dependency on crisis and stress and chaos
Mhm.
were in smaller pockets. Like it was
Mhm.
not as big of a, it was present. we can
Mhm.
we can actually track back all the way to Freud, like reports of the symptomology of an addiction to drama.
Mhm.
But it happened, there's a certain conditions that it takes to
Mhm.
become dependent on addiction to on drama. And I'll
Mhm.
just say, like, people always ask me, why drama?
Mhm.
Why not just do drugs as their addiction?
Mhm.
And my response is, drama is free. You
Mhm.
can seek it, create it, manufacture it wherever you go. It's hard to find cocaine in the middle of the desert, but you can certainly create a story for yourself that never lets you find peace.
True. Yeah.
and
So
and so, yeah,
true. Mm.
so true. It's,
Yeah.
as a 12-year-old, I didn't have access to drugs and alcohol. I had access to drama and the manufacturing of all these stories and gossiping and stirring things up in the school lot, you
Mhm.
know
Mhm. Mm.
and so it makes a lot of sense actually that it would be our most available, quote unquote, drug of choice.
Mhm.
um so yeah, what we have found is that the ways in which media and social media specifically operate have replicated the conditions of an addiction to drama, but on an endemic scale,
Mhm.
which is scary. So buckle your
Mhm.
seatbelt. We're going to unpack
Mhm.
it.
Mhm.
So we know in any part of an addiction, there are a few things that have to be there. Like you have to build a tolerance level to it, meaning that you hit a threshold and you need more to get more high, or you need more to feel more.
Mhm.
Yeah. And we know that there are things like withdrawal symptoms, that has to be present in any addiction. Now, when I was in my 20s, I used to think, oh, I am so capable of holding so much stress and I can just manage it. But what I didn't realize was that I had just built up a higher threshold for stress to
Mhm.
get the actual benefit that I was craving. And in my 20s, I was dealing with some serious illnesses. I had a stroke. I had a bunch of I was in a very unhealthy relationship. I was directing an opera with some of the biggest members of a rock band in the world. And my
Wow.
20s, I was in grad school. I was dealing with a couple other things. And this is not me trying to like go, look at my trauma Olympics here.
Mhm.
It was,
Mhm.
I was still functional because I had built a threshold, a tolerance level for how much stress I could hold.
Mhm. Mhm.
And the moment I broke up with that person, it passed the threshold. Yeah. And to
Mhm.
the point where I basically OD'd. where it
Mm.
was too much for me. It went way past my threshold, and
Mhm.
I basically collapsed for
Mm.
months.
Wow.
And so when I talk about a threshold, a tolerance level, this is a really important piece for understanding how social media is generating an endemic of an addiction to drama. So we live in what's called an attentional economy, meaning that your attention, your focus is the hottest commodity out there. If I can
Mhm.
control your attention, I control what's being purchased. So I'm
Mm.
not selling you something, I'm taking something, which is your attention and your focus, and directing it.
Mhm.
And those who hold the power of your attention hold the power for profit.
Mhm.
And this is not a theory I made up. This is since the late 80s. It's called attentional economy.
Mhm.
And but they weren't neuropsychophysiologists, so they didn't they're economists, so they didn't understand what is the physiological mechanisms for capturing and maintaining attention.
Mm.
And as you might anticipate, the how you capture and maintain someone's attention is to induce a stress response. You trigger their
Ooh.
amygdala, you capture their focus. Their focus goes from broad to centralized and specific to
Mhm.
whatever it is that you are directing them to. So we
Mhm.
don't live in an attentional economy, we live in a stress economy. And that 10, 20 years ago, the amount of stress, and by stress, I mean we're using specific language, imagery, sex, violence, news stories that are induce anger, rage, sadness, fear, all of
Mhm.
these things. They're just tools to capture and maintain your attention. The amount it took 10 years ago is about a fourth of what it takes now.
Wow.
A fourth.
Wow.
So the amount of stimulus coming at us is 3 to 4 times more than it was 10 years ago to capture our attention.
Mm.
That it means it is flooding our nervous system. We have built
Mhm.
a tolerance to essentially get more and feel more.
Mhm.
So
Right.
if I'm running a media station, I know that I have to keep upping the ante to maintain your attention, which I don't care as I'm making all the money. So I don't really give a shit about your nervous system and the health of your nervous system.
Right.
I mean, I personally, Scott, do, but not
Yeah.
as a media conglomerate.
Yeah.
It's not their
Yeah.
main concern.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But there is a physiological flooding,
Mm.
and we are all subject to it.
Mhm.
If we're on social media, if we're watching the news, because negative information, fear, anger, sadness will be more capturing of our attention than positive news. And there's always an effect of that. We are more likely in watching the news to believe bad things will happen to us, even though they won't, than if we don't watch the news.
That's true.
Those who watched the Boston bombing were more traumatized because of the amount of times it was repeated on the news, that the level of PTSD was higher than those who were there and experienced it and didn't watch the news.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that. Wow.
What are we doing as a culture to people's nervous system?
Mm.
It is severe, and it is creating a dependency, because what happens when we don't have that constant stream of flooding in our nervous system?
Mhm.
We start to have withdrawal symptoms, which show up as anxiety and boredom. And
Mhm.
how do you avoid the withdrawal symptoms? You go bite the dog that bit you. You go seek, create, manifest stressful conditions that keep you at what has become the new normal of your nervous system.
Wow. This is big.
This is
Really,
big.
really big. I just,
Yeah.
when you say that, I realize the numbing out, like that we need more and more and more and more. It's like,
Yeah.
oof, it's so true. Anyway, I have like a million thoughts going through my head, like, okay. Talk about how does drama addiction affect friends and family? And you talked about that a minute ago, and
Yeah.
colleagues. Like, talk
Yeah.
about that a little. How does it affect other people?
So there's something called secondary stress,
Mm-hmm.
which is actually one of my favorite subject matters because um, if you've ever been in a room with someone who just loves you,
Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah.
feel love. It resonates. Your whole body mirrors something. And so
Mm-hmm.
part of what's called mirror neurons.
Yeah.
And so it replicates, it resonates, and you have that experience.
Mm-hmm.
Now, wouldn't it be nice if love was the most potent, resonant feeling we had?
Yes.
No, it would be. Unfortunately, that's not how our evolution has developed
Yeah.
as humans. The most contagious state is a stress state.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say contagious, I literally mean if I'm in a stress state, then you are too, just by being in proxy to me.
Mm-hmm.
We know this. Like if you've ever watched someone who is like afraid of public speaking and you
Oh yeah.
watch them,
Mm-hmm.
these are the studies, some of the studies that are done, and your heart's like throbbing, you're sweating yourself
Uh-huh.
on you might think it's empathetic, it's on behalf of them, but you're actually mirroring their stress response.
Mm-hmm.
So, and why that happens is, let's say you're out foraging, I don't know, mushrooms for us for our dinner. And you run into a bear, and that bear starts chasing you. You run into our little cabin where you and I are, partying for the weekend with our mushrooms. This turned out to be a weird story. Um, anyways, you run in, and your eyes, your pupils are dilated, your heart's racing, your posture's leaning forward, your breath is really heavy and shallow, you're sweating,
Mm-hmm.
all the signs of a stress response. I am not going to wait for you to explain to me what has happened. I immediately go into the same response so that I
Mm-hmm.
too can be reactive to the potential threat.
Mm-hmm.
So our whole biological evolution has been to attend to stress response so that we can be adaptive together.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Unfortunately, that also means if I'm in a constant state of crisis and chaos and stress, and I move through the world, it is contagious.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important to recognize when navigating, whether it's a boss or a colleague or a teacher or a friend or a lover or a parent who's addicted to drama, who's in that constant state of activation,
Mm-hmm.
it has an effect on your nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
There is no neutral interaction here. And so it is paramount that you start to gain more awareness and control of your own physiological states. They're going to pull the ground out from underneath you. How do you practice just feeling the weight of your body anchored back in your own self with your own emotions and needs? Because they're doing exactly what the media does. They pull you out from you.
Yeah.
They siphon that energy like an extra battery pack that helps them stay in the tornado of chaos and stay in for these brief moments relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it has an effect on you, a serious effect. You become further and further away from your ability to attend to your own feelings and needs. Just like the media is, as it's pulling you out from yourself into whatever it wants to curate your attention towards, you
Mm-hmm.
become less attuned to your own feelings and needs. You unintentionally become more suppressed and repressed.
Mm-hmm.
And that is also part of what happens in addiction and drama. You are
Mm-hmm.
so out of tune with your fundamental needs that you go chasing these bigger emotions to try to identify where and how you are in the world.
Mm. So if I'm wait, let me ask this question.
Yeah.
Boundaries. I know you speak about boundaries in the book, right?
Yeah. Okay.
How do you I know with myself, like once I was able to work with my own, really it was an addiction to drama, like drama, chaos, suffering, the whole
Yeah.
gamut I had.
We
Yeah, it
all
was
love the
wonderful. Yeah,
suffering.
it was yeah, that was a good one.
Well, can
Um
I just
yeah,
say
yeah,
when
please.
suffering is our love language, I mean, when it is the currency for love as children, then we
Mm-hmm.
mirror it and we replicate it as adults. We seek it out
Mm-hmm.
as hoping to get more love. Like as a child, if you were loved and attended to when you were sick and things were wrong, more than when things were right, you will
Yeah.
mirror that. That is becomes the currency of love.
You're reading my mind.
You're,
You
I hope
totally
I'm
just
not
read my mind
scaring
because
you.
when I was growing up, I remember, and I felt loved growing up, but I have to
Sure.
admit, when I was sick, I
Yeah.
remember I was having a visual when you were just talking, when you were speaking. It's like when I was really sick on the couch and home from school.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, my dad would come up like, oh, kissing me on the forehead and how are you? And I love you. Is there anything I do? My mother would make me whatever I want. It was all of
Yeah.
it like overdone. Like,
Yeah.
and I had that thought so much when I was an adult, like, good God, like I think that this was created as a child. Of course it was. It was a program, right? So you're reading my mind right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a lot of attention when I was sick growing up. So of
Yeah.
course, let's unconsciously create suffering as an adult. It made perfect
Yeah.
sense, right?
And how many times do you call a friend to say, hi, things are just going great.
Yeah,
I don't
no.
have anything to vent about. I have nothing to gossip about. I just wanted to let you know I love you and I love myself. Like, how often do we do that?
Yeah, what a boring
What a
conversation.
boring conversation because it doesn't garner attention and doesn't garner that currency of love.
Yeah, and to your point about the news, this is why
Yeah.
there's no I think there was years ago, I think Oprah or somebody tried to put out a positive news channel. It didn't work.
Nope.
Nobody wants to watch positive news.
Nope.
We want the drama.
We want the drama. I
We
mean,
want the drama.
we want the drama. Yeah.
So, but here's the question. So we do, we want the drama. But then I have to admit, because I did so much nervous system work with
Yeah.
myself for
Yeah.
so many years, and I'm finally in this place of much more balanced. And I think it's something I will always work on.
Yeah.
But now I protect myself from
Mm.
drama. Like
Hmm.
I don't watch the news. I don't,
Great.
and if someone's talking about that or politics or whatever the heck it is, I'm like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
But I'm very protective of that. So talk to us about boundaries around
Yeah.
this. You know,
Yeah.
how do we protect ourselves? Because sometimes I get irritated and I'll snap at people. I'll say, I told you I don't want to talk about that. But I'm doing it from a place of I am protecting myself because I
Yeah.
don't want to go back into the roller coaster of drama and suffering and
Yeah.
chaos. So talk
Yeah.
about the boundaries.
Yeah. Well, like you, I stopped watching the news when I was 2001.
Wow. I didn't start then. That's a long time. Yeah.
It was after 9/11. So I
Mm-hmm.
was a few blocks away
Oh,
from
wow.
the towers and I remember my parents. Well, first of all, we couldn't get a hold of each other for almost
Oh
24
my
hours because
gosh.
and when they finally got a hold of when we got a hold of each other, they're like, we're coming to get you. The world is falling apart. And 24 hours after the event, like I was crying on the street and laughing on with people and like processing and like it didn't
Mhm.
feel like we were in a threat state in the
Yeah.
same way.
Right.
And 2 days later, my parents were still like, "We're coming to get you. You don't have any choice. You got to come
Mhm.
home.
Mhm.
New York is under attack." And I was like, "It's not under. I'm here. I don't know what you're talking about."
Yeah. Yeah.
But for them, it hadn't ended because they were so glued to the television. And I said to them, at that moment, I was like, "Do you have the television on right now?" They're like, we
Mm.
can't pull away. We need to know you're safe." And I
Mhm.
said, "I'm telling you I'm safe. But
Mhm.
you're never going to believe it if you keep watching that replay over and over again."
Mhm.
And that's what you're replaying is not my current experience. It was my experience days ago.
Mm.
And it just like dawned on me in that moment of like, lecturing my parents who were
Yeah.
just so scared and trying to be so sweet. I was like, oh my gosh, this is not okay. And I just stopped watching the news. And, for people who think I'm naive to the world, fine. I don't really care because
Yeah.
I'm healthier and
Yeah.
I feel okay. And I actually understand as someone who also went to school for writing, I understand the very tools you use to capture an audience's attention. I've written
Mhm.
plays. I've written books. I understand the tools and technologies you do, and it's manipulative if you want it to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so like it's to me, when I see the news, I'm like, okay, it's hard to distill the performance and the drama tools from the actual facts.
True. Very true.
And I'm not sure they can either at this point.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
yikes. So boundaries.
Yeah.
That I think it's a really healthy boundary to start to go, where can you minimize your flooding? Start to build awareness of what it feels like to be like in your body. And when you're hitting a limit, they're going to keep pushing you past that limit because they're not observing your individual process. All they have is a general concept of flood in terms of media and social media. So, and other people, like, someone who's addicted to drama is not going to be like, should I stop now? You seem overwhelmed. That's just not going to happen.
No,
So you
it's
have
not.
to attend and care for yourself. And that
Yes.
is what a boundary is. So, whether it's saying to a friend who's constantly venting and gossiping, you say, look, I only have 10 minutes today to hear you. I want you to know you're loved, but that's the time frame I have for you today. Or
That's
I'm
good.
happy to listen, but we're going to go take a walk because I'm not going to be cornered in a room with you, roping me in. Or, hey, I'm happy to listen to your experience. What I'm not okay is listening to what they said and what they did. I'm really happy to hear how you're feeling and what you need.
Yeah.
Moving it out of the sort of devices that feed the fire of drama.
Yeah.
Keep regrounding yourself. That's a boundary. And keep attending to your feelings and needs. If you don't know what you're feeling and you can't identify what you need, then you have to step back from the interaction.
Yeah.
And notice where you're enabling them. That is a boundary to yourself. If a friend calls you and they're like, oh my gosh, you will not believe what just happened. Shirley from down the block said this at the grocery store, and and then you go, no, she didn't. Tell me more. Tell me everything. Give me the tea. You are enabling this addiction to drama, and you are actually feeding your own.
So true. It's on both. It's both. It's both sides. Yeah. Tell me more. Then you're opening that door and you want to hear it.
Stop trying to be a martyr. Stop trying to fix those with an addiction to drama. Stop trying to get in the middle to protect them. These are all forms of your own addiction to drama. And your boundary is take care of you.
That's powerful. And I know hard for so many of us that aren't used to really redirecting back to self. We're so good at looking outside of self. So if I'm listening right now and I'm thinking to myself, wow, I have an addiction to drama. Can you just give us a few things right now?
Yeah.
Other than buy the book.
Buy my
Number
book.
1, go buy the book. Number 2, what can I do starting immediately? Like when this podcast is over, what can I start doing right now to start healing my addiction to drama?
Probably the audiobook. No, I'm just kidding. No. Yeah, I mean, here's the easiest thing that I invite people to do is notice where you disrupt and interrupt your sense of peace, stillness, tranquility, ease in your life. Yeah. And if you can't notice where you do it, notice where it happens. And then look at how you're a contributor to that later on.
That's good.
And that will give you the beginning of awareness of where you rev yourself up and all the strategies you utilize to do that. Which might be like turning on the news. That is, still your responsibility. You're still contributing it by simply turning on, by doom scrolling, by leaving comments on other people's posts, knowing it might be antagonistic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Does your opinion really need to be seen and heard? I'm serious. Like, yes. yes, in you, but in leaving a comment where someone's going to comment back and it's just going to create more drama, is that really what you're seeking in life? Is
Mm.
that really what you're hungry for in your life? And if so, well, you're addicted to drama. Congratulations.
Yeah. But I
But
think too, the next step, and
yeah,
I don't know, I want your opinion, but I
yeah,
would say to add it from my therapy coaching background is sit in and feel the emotions that are going to rise up when you don't leave that comment, when you don't
yeah,
ask your friend, tell me about Shirley at the grocery store and what just happened when she told you up, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
There's one step in between that,
what is
and
it?
that's the step of putting space between
Hmm.
stimulus and response. So
Yeah.
before we can get to the underlying emotions, before we can look what's underneath the hood of the car, so to speak,
Yeah.
we need to interrupt the reflex, that
Mhm.
activation reflex that I was talking about.
Yeah.
The one that goes, I'm not going to let you settle. It's the alarm system that goes off
Hmm.
as you start to find quietude or stillness. And so interrupting all the ways in which you are disrupting your peace.
Mm.
Going, I just noticed I was about to call my friend and vent again. I
Mm.
was just about to like do that. And then I'm creating space.
Got it.
And
That
in
makes
that
sense.
space, that's when we get to go, okay, what's actually here in the space? What in me hasn't been recognized? What
Mm.
hasn't been felt? And that's when we start to get into more layers of trauma work,
Hmm.
and where we start to go into the things that have been avoided that are actually fueling the addiction to drama, that are
Mm.
fueling the avoidance itself.
Interesting.
And so when we can start to process that, it
Hmm.
starts to take the fuel out of it. We'll still repeat the behaviors for a while.
Hmm.
It will start to feel like empty. Like I go and I repeat a story and I'm like, I really didn't need to retell that story again.
Yeah.
That story's already been processed. Like with clients, I would, when they repeat a story that doesn't have any juice to it, I usually say, does the sandwich bag actually have a sandwich in it? Have you already eaten your lunch? And they're like, oh, it's an empty sandwich bag, Scott. You're right. You're right. Or, oh, there's some crumbs left that haven't been processed.
Yeah.
All right. Can we let go of the story and address the crumbs?
Yeah. Oh, that's really good. I like that analogy. That's really good.
And yeah. And
It's your sandwich in the sandwich bag.
I have no idea. I just said it one day to someone. They're like, I get exactly what you mean. I'm still carrying around the fucking bag and there's no sandwich in it. And I was like, okay, well, clearly we'll just keep going with this analogy and hope it works for other people. Um, and so you'll repeat the behaviors for a while until it just feels like the behaviors feel so empty and
Yeah.
vacant of the original fuel.
Hmm.
And that's when we start to really address identity formation. So
Hmm.
as part of living in a world in which you feel like everyone and everything is against you, no one has your back,
Hmm.
you identify as the victim,
Hmm.
and you carry it around with you like a suit and a
Right.
name tag.
Right.
And it means releasing our identity of victim means that we release a lot of who we think we are, or who we are.
Hmm.
And it is a radical shift of perception of how we are in relation to the world, and it changes our reality
Mm.
of who we are and who we are in relation to the rest of the people around us. And it is not an easy thing to let go of our identity.
It's not. No way.
Especially the identity of the I am a victim,
Yeah.
uh, because it like seeps into our cells, and our cells have that name tag even, that I am a victim, and we respond as such. So after we've addressed, navigating the identity release, then we get into the deeper belonging. So when I
Mm.
talk about in addiction, there is that void.
Hmm.
That void is the absence of where we should be because of whatever trauma pushed us out of ourselves, or
Mm.
we dissociated out of ourselves. leaving this vacancy where we really should have been, if we had been given the time, space, permission, support to stay in our experience and have processed it. So belonging, or the reduction of addiction, is coming back home and reoccupying that space with ourselves. That is the curative to an addiction. And it is belonging. And when we belong to ourselves, then we can start to lower the drawbridge and feel intimacy, the safety for intimacy and belonging to other people in the world that we live in.
Oof. Beautiful. Beautifully said. I love that. Belonging to self. That's really beautiful. Thank you so much. This has been wonderful. Really, really wonderful.
Pleasure.
Where would people find you?
On the interwebs, on social media, after I just totally denounced it. You can find me on my website, Dr. Scott Lyons, so Dr. Scott Lyons, Lyons. I am on Instagram. I heard I'm on TikTok. I don't know. Apparently someone on my team put me on TikTok. But I post often on Instagram and as well. And I have a podcast called The Gently Used Human, which is a snarky, fun, jokey place to go into the depth of what it's like to be a human who's just been lived.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much. And where would we find the book? Is it on your website and Amazon and all places?
Yeah, hopefully all places books are sold. So your independent bookshop hopefully has them. Amazon, Target, my website, you can go and find links as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on today. I really, really appreciate you and your book. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And thank you for your sweet vulnerability and honesty of even recognizing your own propensity for it. I think it gives those who are listening more safety, perhaps, in recognizing it in themselves.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed the show today. As always, I love to hear what you thought about the show. And for further discussion around this topic, don't forget to join us in the Adult Chair Closed Facebook group. Come join us there because we love to talk not only about this topic, drama, but we talk about all the things that come up in our lives. It's hard to be a healthy adult, and this is where we talk about it in the Adult Chair Closed Facebook group. So come join us there. We'd love to have you. And I get in there and I'm doing a lot of live streams where we are taking questions and I'm helping you guys through any of your issues or problems that you're dealing with in life, including drama. So I look forward to seeing you in there, and I look forward to seeing you right here next week in the Adult Chair. Have a great week, everybody.